بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد.
Hello and welcome to Islamic Civilization, this time session 20 that deals with the Abbasid Empire. Abbasid Empire, Arab in so far the ethnicity is concerned, language is concerned, but you will see moving into non-Arab territories. And so let's see what we have in this session 20 speaking about the Abbasid Empire that stretched in time frame from 750 to 1258 AD, the Abbasids. Objectives: we will look at the end of the Umayyad Caliphate in Syria, the Abbasids revolt in Khorasan in Iran, rise of the Abbasid Caliphate in Iraq, contexts and conflicts in Eurasia, that would be Europe and Asia, so we call it Eurasia, and the golden age in the Middle East starting with the Abbasid Empire. And all that golden age was based on science and medicine, sans frontiers, without any borders. You see the free flow of science and technology and medicine and books and knowledge in the Abbasid Empire from east to west. So let's see what we have. So we will start with the end of the Umayyad Caliphate that came to an end in 750. And so the Umayyad Caliphate, as you see it, already stretching from Spain in the west that we talked about last time, all the way to modern day Afghanistan in the east. So from Spain in the west to the Indus, which is the modern day area of Pakistan and Afghanistan, or as we call it, the AfPak. So that was by 750, they had already moved as far away from Mecca and Medina. And so keep in mind, as I told you last time, this area included North Africa, the entire Mediterranean, the western country in the whole entire Spanish Iberian Peninsula, and then moving east, it included Egypt, Iraq, Syria, Iran, past Iran into Afghanistan and modern day Pakistan, and further up north, some parts of Turkey, modern day Turkey, and then some parts of Central Asia up north, and then moving north up to western part of China. So it's a huge big area that the Muslim rulers were able to establish their empire, especially the Umayyad Empire, as early as 750, and this would be now continued. So for the territorial expansion of Muslims was concerned, that expansion would continue with the Abbasid, but there would come a time that there would not be any more expansion, and they would leave it to other people who would expand further on. So the transition from the Umayyad to the Abbasid would be the change of the dynasty. The religion of Islam would stay as the same. The territorial integrity of the place would remain the same. However, what you would see, the change you would see, that would be the rise and fall of the dynasties, the dynastic rulers, and the families that rule the people. So the place would be the same, the people would be the same, religion would be the same. However, with some minor changes here and there as we move from one place to another place. So let's see what else we have. The Umayyad Empire and the end of it, stretching, as I said, from Spain in the west to Afghanistan in the east, connected Europe and Asia with Islam. That does not mean that everybody became a Muslim, nor that was the idea, but people were introduced to Islam and took the Middle East to the known world at that time. centrally controlled from Damascus. That was the Umayyad style of ruling from Syria. However, that whole huge big empire was locally ruled by Arab overlords and their local non-Arab Muslims and Muslims and non-Muslims. So it was not just only Damascus controlling everything. The local people, in fact, they were in power. And whether that was good or not, we would see in a minute. So there are, theories of governments, and one of them would be everything is great if you control it from one center. But that does not work, as we have seen it in, so lately at the end of, so to speak, of the 20th century, the fall of Soviet empire, that was centrally controlled. And so the people in the regions of Soviet Union did not have power. And that's how people revolted against the centrally controlled Soviet Union. Even that did not, survive. It was a brutal system. So similarly, the Umayyad control from Damascus, from Syria, of course, they could not control everybody, on the border of Afghanistan and on the border of China in the east and on the border of Spain in the west. That was just impossible. And especially if there were only a few thousand, Arabs at that time controlling millions of non-Arab Muslims and non-Muslims. So let's see how it happened. The rise of a new dynasty, that is the Abbasids in distant Khorasan in Iran. Some people write it with KHO, some people write it with KHU, doesn't matter. It's still the same place, Khorasan in Iran. The Abbasids, they were Arab descendants. The Abbasids were the Arab descendants of Abbas ibn Abdul Muttalib, very important person, brother of Abdullah ibn Abdul Muttalib. So they, Abbas ibn Abdul Muttalib and Abdullah ibn Abdul Muttalib, they were brothers. Abdullah was the father of Prophet Muhammad, so that would make him the paternal uncle. Abbas was the paternal uncle of Prophet Muhammad, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, peace be upon him. And Abbas ibn Abdul Muttalib, the uncle of the Prophet, he was a wealthy merchant and always protected his nephew, Muhammad, peace be upon him, even if he was not, at that time Muslim. But still, he protected his nephew. Later on, he would convert to Islam. His son, Abdullah ibn Abbas, that would be the Abbas son, his son Abdullah ibn Abbas, he supported Ali's claim to caliphate against the Umayyads. So that would make any person belonging to Abbas family, the Abbasid family, that would definitely be supporters of Ali, the fourth caliph, but with a difference. Some people would go up to some extent. That would be the political. Some people would go a little bit further, and that would be getting into sectarian differences with other people. So people would stop at one place, some would move, to another place. So from how people would stop at politics only, having political differences, but keeping the sectarian or the religious differences, out of it. And so they would be much more political than, religious. And so that's how it worked. Those people who were political as well as religious, they turned sectarian about the issue of who would rule the Muslim community after the death of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so that, as I told you in the last sessions, created the rift among Muslims between Shias and Sunnis. Okay, let's see. The Abbasids. So the Umayyad Empire, they persecuted the Abbasids because the Abbasids did not want the Umayyad to have the caliphate. Because, as I said, the Abbasid believed that Ali, their clansman, was the right person to be the caliph. But that did not happen. So the Abbasid, they settled in far away safe havens, far, far away from Mecca and Medina, and especially also Damascus, that was in the hands of the Umayyad. And so that's how you find so many Arabs at that time and even now living as far, as modern day Afghanistan and Pakistan. And so Khurasan was one of those safe havens in eastern Iran, which is also northern Afghanistan. It's a border area between eastern Iran and northern Afghanistan. Their territory is called Khurasan, the historical place. This group of people, the Abbasids, they are Arabs. They come from the same clan of the Prophet, Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, Prophet Muhammad, and so they were known in the area as Sayyids, and Sayyid means master. Not that they were owners of slaves or they were owners of huge big land, no. But out of respect, people would call them Sayyids, masters, because they came from the family of the Prophet. So among the non-Arab Muslims, they were highly respected, the Abbasids, because of their family relation with the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. And that even that respect is still there till this day. And the person coming from the Prophet family is called a Sayyid. They also intermarried among the non-Arab local Muslims in the area. So that's why you see a lot of people in Iran, in Afghanistan, and in Pakistan. Till this day, they are called Sayyids. And whether they are really, truly, directly the descendants of the family of Ali and Fatima, peace be upon them, whether that is true or not, but still, if a person claims that type of a descent, historically they have been claiming that descent, then the rest of the people, don't mind to give them that respect. And so some of them are religious functionaries in the areas, which is a very important, function in Muslim society. So because of their connection with the Prophet, the family connection with the Prophet, and because of their religious function, like a priest, a mullah or the imam in the mosque, that gives them, respect in the society, and that continues till this day. So anyone from Iran, Afghanistan, and Pakistan, even India, in that area, and we're talking of millions and millions of people, within those millions of people, if anyone, and not that many people, but still, anyone who writes with his name Sayyid, either before or after, that is definitely whom we are talking about, and they exist even till this day. I have good friends among the Sayyid families. Okay, let's see. The Abbasid revolution in 750 AD, and so one person, Abu al-Abbas as-Safa, this person, Abu al-Abbas as-Safa, he staged a successful revolution against the Umayyad ruler in Khurasan, which I said eastern Persia or Iran, and northern Afghanistan. And as I said, it was a safe haven for anti-Umayyad Shias and Kharijites. Anyone who did not like the Umayyads, that was the place to live in, because they were safe and secure from the punishments of the Umayyads. So Abu al-Abbas as-Safa, he staged a revolution against the Umayyads, and so he utilized the anti-Umayyad sentiments among Shia Muslims who did not like the Umayyads till this day, and among the local non-Arab Muslims. So you have two types of Muslims, Shia Arab Muslims, they could be Shia, they could be local people, and the non-Arab Muslims, they could be Iranians, they could be Afghanis, they could be Khurasanis, they could be anyone from Tajikistan or Uzbekistan. So that whole area had different type of ethnic groups. And so what united them was, number one, Islam. They were all Muslims, and some non-Muslims, of course. Some Arab and some local people, non-Arab, like Persian-speaking people, Uzbek-speaking people, some other languages. And so they had only one thing in common, and that was they did not like the Umayyad rule locally as well as centrally from Damascus. And so Abu al-Abbas, he staged a successful revolution, revolt against the Umayyad, and let's see what happened. The Abbasid revolution. And so there on the extreme right upper corner, you have the area of Khurasan, and which is far, far away from Syria on the left. Okay. So Abul Abbas as-Safa, he headed anti-Umayyad Khurasani rebels, attacked the Umayyad ruler Marwan II. In 750 AD, he won the battle of the Zab River. Zab is close by there, a river, and so there on the bank of the river Zab, he won the battle of the Zab River against the Umayyads, 750 AD. He also seized Iraq and Syria. He moved very quickly, seized Iraq and Syria because nobody resisted him. And so he rewarded Arab and non-Arab Muslims with Umayyad lands and high positions in the military, in the bureaucracy, and all that. And so keep in mind this Abul Abbas as-Safa. Look at his last name, as-Safa, so to speak. That is not really his last name, that is his title. That is how he became known. Even in his life, some people believe in his lifetime, people would call him as-Safa. And those people who would call him as-Safa, of course, were his opponents. In the opposition, as-Safa means the blood shedder. So he shed a lot of blood of a lot of Umayyad people, and so that's how he became, the blood shedder. And that's not, a nice title, but it stuck because that's what he did. He massacred, his Umayyad rivals on the battlefield, in their homes, in their places, because he did not trust anyone. Now, speaking of these situations in which there would be a revolution, a revolt, and definitely the existing power, in this case the Umayyad, they would crush the revolt. However, they would not have the wherewithal, the power, the might, the weapons, the army, the people to support them. And so in between it becomes a big mess, usually a civil war, which kills a lot of people. And so all these wars, and it's not, an affair of Mother Teresa. They may not be all Hitlers, but definitely they are not all Mother Teresas. And so the result is you see a lot of brutality, a lot of violence, and innocent lives, mostly innocent lives, are lost in any civil war, whether that is the Spanish Civil War or the American Civil War or any civil war. And that's what we see also, in other, places in Europe, in Asia, and in Africa, especially in Rwanda. And so this was, a brutal affair. This revolt killed a lot of people, but at the end of it, one dynasty, the Umayyad, was displaced or replaced by another dynasty, the Abbasid. Let's see. This is the river Jab, and somewhere on the bank of this river Jab, the battle was won by the Abbasids against the Umayyads in 750, and that one battle gave the whole power to the rising Abbasid dynasty. All right. Staying with the Abbasid revolution, so Abul Abbas as-Safa, he really did not rule for that long. He declared himself the first caliph of the Abbasid dynasty. So he is the founder of the dynasty, and that is why from his name Abbas, the dynasty is known as the Abbasi or Abbasid. He ruled only for 5 years, but still he accomplished, the establishment of a great dynasty. He founded the Abbasid Caliphate. Not too many people would agree with that title, but still some, if not all historians call it the Abbasid Caliphate. Did not restore caliphate to the Shia Imam. That was another very important issue in the rise of the Abbasids. So the way Abul Abbas wanted to have his big numbers, a big army to attack the Umayyads, especially that of Marwan II, he needed people. And so he promised different people different things. Some people were okay with the promise of more land, less taxes, more recruitment in the army, as armies are always, even today, a great opportunity, to have economic, good economy, personal as well as national, I would say. So he promised, positions in the army, position in the bureaucracy, land, so many other privileges to people. However, the Shia community, they believed that if he won this war against the Umayyad, who were the usurpers of the caliphate, then he should give that caliphate to the Shia imams, the Shia leaders. Whether he promised that or not, we really do not know. Those people who said he did promise that he would get the caliphate out of the hands of the Umayyad usurpers and would give it to the Shia imams, maybe he might have said so, but keep in mind the documents that say so were written by Shia, not by the Abbasid rulers, but then later on the Abbasids said that there was no promise on part of the, Abu al-Abbas as-Safa. So that also made him the enemy of his former allies in this war against the Umayyad. So I thought I should make that clear. The Shia would have very hard time under the Abbasids. Okay, let's see. So the Shia accused as-Safa of reneging on his promise. We don't know really if he made that promise, but who knows, might. So what he did, he included more non-Arab people in his government, more non-Shia Muslims and non-Muslims in his government, in his bureaucracy, in his army, and of course, he liberally, gave the land of the Umayyad people to his own people who supported him in this major revolt against the Umayyads. Okay. Then in 751, there was another problem, and that was the Battle of Talas. The Abbasid and the Tang dynasties, they collided, and both were expanding respectively west and east. The Tang dynasty, it was expanding in the west, and the Abbasid dynasty was expanding in the east. And so naturally they collided in that area, and that was close to China anyway. And so this collision brought them into a major warfare in Talas. So 751, battle on the Talas river. Some people call it Talash, some people call it Talas. Doesn't make a difference. The Abbasid defeated the Tang army. This was a major victory for the newly established, 1-year-old established dynasty, the Abbasid dynasty. The Arabs and their allies, they settled, intermarried, and became intermediaries in Western China. So this would not be the first time that Arabs and non-Arab Muslim would come to Western China. However, they were just the victors of the war against the Tang dynasty, and keep in mind, Tang dynasty, a very powerful dynasty. However, there are more powerful people than the existing powerful people, and you would see that how dynasties would rise and fall. The mighty would fall, and some weak people would rise, and they would do terrible things, and then and so history would continue in that way with the rise fall of dynasties and local powers. So here, more Arab came to this area, and they settled there. More non-Arab Muslims also came and settled there, and so they started intermarriages. And it would be mostly Muslim, whether Arabs or non-Arab, but Muslims marrying Chinese women in the West, whether Han Chinese or non-Han Chinese, even some Mongols, marrying the local women, and that is how from that mixture, so to speak, or the intermarriages between the two, the Muslims and the Chinese, what you have is a huge big number in millions Chinese Muslims in the west of China. I'm just saying this if you are wondering where did these all Muslims in China come from. That was the result of one and another warfare, but not just only warfare. More and more Muslims would be attracted to China going east, and more Chinese would go west, would come to the Middle East, and there they would meet together and intermarriages happen, and that's how the Chinese Muslim population increased. Until this day, if you look at this area, you would find a lot of non-Chinese graves of 9 Chinese people. And people wonder, why these non-Chinese looking, Caucasian looking people, what they're doing here. I mean, their dead bodies, of course, in the graves, but that is because so many people came to China, western part of China, and that's the Taklamakan Desert is full of, the bones and the dead bodies of non-Chinese Muslims and non-Muslims. Okay, let's see what else. So here on the extreme right of your TV, you have Khorasan, Talas, on Talas River with the red dot, and on the left you have the Abbasid base. And so for west, from Khorasan, which was the base of the Abbasid dynasty, they had to go all the way to the Talas River to meet the Chinese expanding power, and there they collided, in which the Abbasid dynasty won and the Chinese Tang dynasty lost. That would not be a good thing for the Tang dynasty, because that could encourage other powers to rise against the Tang dynasty, and boy, everybody would love to rise against the local power if they could. Nobody wants to live under anybody, and so everybody wants freedom, and so you see out of the struggle for the freedom a lot of warfare. Okay. Then in the next few years, the An Lushan rebellion, the Abbasid helped the Tang dynasty, and this was to quell the rebellion of General An Lushan against the expanding Tang dynasty. In fact, General An Lushan himself was an officer in the Tang dynasty army, but he did not like the Tang dynasty brutalizing his own people in western China. So he revolted against the Tang dynasty so forcefully that he forced the Tang emperor to move his capital further east to be safe from General An Lushan and his people. So the point here is you would see the rise and fall of the dynasties with the rise of the local people against the power who wanted to dominate them. And so here General An Lushan, who was not a Chinese, not a Han Chinese. Scholars are confused about his real ethnicity. He could be a mixture, from some Chinese and non-Chinese people, but he was an officer, military officer in Tang dynasty army. And so he revolted against the emperor's order to crush his own people. That's what the local story is. And so he revolted against the Tang dynasty, and the Tang dynasty asked help from anyone who could defeat this General An Lushan. And so the Abbasid, they stepped in, because An Lushan could be a problem for the Abbasid in the east, and so they stepped in, and other people also stepped in. Even some Mongols, they helped the Tang dynasty to crush this revolt, and that is what happened. Okay, let's see. Other regional states also helped the Tang dynasty to crush the revolt of General An Lushan. A lot of people got killed, especially the Chinese, at the hands of General An Lushan. He was not, a small person, a small force. So this intensified regional competition and hostilities, as if like everybody wanted freedom, and if you deprive them of their freedom, then they would definitely do something about it. And so what you see here, the rise and fall of powers in the marginal lands, not in the centers of the dynasty, but at the margins of the dynasty, people would definitely rise. And so, 500 years later, you would see the rise of the Mongols, and their Khans would be coming, and they would crush the Chinese, even the people in Kiev, in Ukraine, and the Russians, and the Arabs, and everybody in between. So the Mongol Khans are coming 500s only later. Okay. Staying with the Abbasid Empire, mostly confined to Iraq and Iran. That was their base. The Umayyad base, as you remember, was Syria and Egypt, but the Abbasid preferred Iraq and Iran. So Abbasid Sunni leaders clashed with their former Shia supporters. However, Persian language still remained, almost at par with Arabic. That was other issue. The Persian people, they loved their language till this day, and so they got this Persian language recognition from the Arabs, and so the Arab had to give up their domination in that area. Arabic language of religious and secular scholars, that would be the Arabic. It would still stay the language of religion and some secular scholars also, Muslim and non-Muslim. So Arabic would be the journal language. However, you would see the rise of the Persian language as a, I wouldn't say rival language, but a language that would be also, very popular, and with poetry, with prose and other, arts. So maybe I should say one thing here when it comes to the tussle between Arabic and Persian language. In fact, that tussle was already there between the two people, the Arabs and the Persians. And that is a tussle of ethnicity. And some people call it the tussle of the race between the Arab Semitic people and the Persians or Iranian being the Aryan people. Okay? When I say Aryan, at this time, do not jump to the Nazis and the Hitler gang in Germany. This is the same ideology, but on a very low scale, but still the Aryans believed that they were the noble people. Iran were their homeland, and that's what you got the word Iran and Arya, connected. Arya means noble people. Iran was the home of this noble group of people, the Aryans, that later on you hear so much about them in the Second World War in Western Germany. So the tussle between the two already existed before the rise of Islam. Okay? Now, after the rise of Islam, the Persians, Iranians, very proud of their language, Persian language, and they wanted to make it the language of their religion, of their culture, their prose and their poetry, and that is what they achieved during the Abbasid dynasty, because the Abbasid dynasty was very liberal dynasty. So after 750, as you would see on the one hand the rise of Arabic as the international language between Spain and India, but at the same time you would see the rise of the Persian language in the region of Persia, Iran, Afghanistan, Central Asia, even up to India and Pakistan. So Persian would remain very strong in the area, especially in the eastern half of the Muslim world as we know it today. Okay, let's see further. So Arabic, the language of religious and secular scholars, Muslim and non-Muslims, and that would be the case, as I said, with Arabic universal language. It will become in the Muslim world from Spain to India. Okay, this is the Abbasid domain. On the left, the darker color of the green color, that is Umayyad, and the lighter color is that of the Abbasid. Okay. I'm bringing this map to tell you that look at this, the fragmentation of this whole area between Spain in the west to China in the east. So if you thought the Abbasid were a great power, yes, they were a great power, but then they were surrounded in the north by the Byzantine Empire, in further west by their former rivals, Umayyads, and in the east, of course, you see the Tang dynasty. Similarly, the Tang dynasty was itself not the only power in the region. Up north, they had Mongols over their heads. Further north, the Uyghur population in the west, and so the Tibetan people in further west. And so the Tang dynasty, the Chinese, as great a dynasty it was, still it was surrounded on the periphery by non-Chinese people who did not like to be bullied, to be governed, to be ruled, to be taxed, to be drafted by the Chinese. Similarly was the case with the Arab Abbasid dynasty, or for that reason with the Umayyad dynasty. Yes, they were Arab, they were Muslim, but in the region, in the arc of the northern, Mediterranean, you have Turks, you have Greeks, you have Italians, you have Spanish, you have North African south of the Mediterranean, and these people did not want to be, again, bullied and taxed and, brought under their control, by the Arabs. And so the people on the periphery definitely would fight. And if they win, good luck to them. If they don't, too bad. The empire is already there anyway. But you will see a lot of fragmentation of the empire. Let's see further. This map also gives you the same feature that, the only power is not really the only power, neither the Tang in the east nor the Abbasid in the middle. They were not the only power. They were very strong, no question about it, but there were other powers in the periphery, and they could kill the empire. Here is another one. Mostly between Muslim Spain and Muslim Pakistan. Spain in the west, Pakistan in the east. And look at all this stuff. These are all Muslims divided into dynasties. So if, where is the Umayyad? A little town, maybe, or little people, somewhere out there, surrounded by all these different ethnic groups speaking their own languages, and previously who had their own religions, but now Muslim. Even look at the southern part of the Italian peninsula in the boot. Look at the map. Italy, South Italy, that is a Muslim southern Italy. Look at the island of Corsica. Even that is under Islam. So you have a lot of, Muslim people, north and south, east and west, but divided. And that division of the dynasties would create a lot of death and destruction in the region. And that is nothing old and nothing new. You see that, all over in history, Muslim history, non-Muslim history, Chinese history, Russian history, history of Ukraine, of Poland, further west, you go to Spanish history, the same thing, the Glorious Revolution in England, the same thing. And so civil wars and the rise and fall of one power at the expense of another power. Okay, let's see further. I love maps, so that's why I brought maybe 2-3 maps at one place. Okay, now this Abbasid empire, with all these people, different people, Muslim, non-Muslim, okay, different ethnic groups, different languages, different old cultures, centuries, 1,000 years old cultures, they were all united in one empire, and the result is what? A golden age in the Middle East. Everybody brought their own knowledge. So this was the first time the synthesizing and the creating of new knowledge in the area. The first time so many people came together to make new knowledge possible. Okay? So what you see is the rise of mathematics in the Abbasid Empire. Astronomy, medicine, chemistry, nothing like ever like that. Okay? And so all under the Islamic Abbasid Empire. And so what you see is algebra, a completely new thing. You can blame it on the Abbasids if you don't like algebra. Algorithm, that's another new mathematical science. Astrolabe, observatories, paper making, map making, compass making, and believe it or not, all these are based on real practical needs, the daily needs. For example, look at compass. Compass used to find your direction. And of all the religions, Muslim had the greatest need for a compass to find the direction to Kaaba. 5 times a day, Muslim need to pray. And so 5 times a day, they need to find out, where the Kaaba is, especially they are out of their own town and own place. So there, the need of the compass. Okay? All these are practical sciences. Then also this golden age created something new. Nothing like that ever happened before under the Abbasid Empire. It was made possible. Translated the ancient Greek books in Arabic. And had it not been for the Arabs to translate these ancient Greek books, any historian of the Greek civilization would tell you these would have been completely lost. And so the Arabs, they gathered them, translated them in Arabic, and it would be the Europeans, they would in fact use Arabic books in medieval Europe. They would use these books And then they would translate it into their local languages like Spanish, Italian, German, French, and English. So these translation of the Greek books would be not directly from the Greek books. The Spanish, the German, the English, the Italian translation of the Greek books would be basically the translation of the Arabic of the Greek books. So that is why the Arabs, they saved Greek knowledge regarding mathematics, especially medicine, astronomy, geography, and that is the reason based on the Greek knowledge on the one hand, the Romans on the other, still further east the Iranian, still further east the Indian, and these are what? 1,000 years old civilizations, and all that knowledge was brought together into the crucible of the Abbasid Empire and created new things out of it. And now, for the first time, the Indian Sanskrit stuff, knowledge, the Persian knowledge, the Greek, all these were translated in Arabic. And Arabic being the universal language, as I said, from Spain in the west to India in the east, everybody could understand what the Indian scholar meant, or the Persians, or the Greek, and now everybody could read it. And you didn't have to be a Muslim to read Arabic, and that's even true today. There are non-Muslim Arabs in millions, okay, throughout the Middle East, and most of them are Christians. And so whatever your religion did not matter. If you are a Zoroastrian, if you are a Christian, you are a Muslim, whatever your religion, if you could speak Arabic, that was the language of knowledge, just like today English is, in most of the world. Okay, let's see. So that golden age started once there. It went from 750 to 1258, and 1258 is an important date of death and destruction that we'll talk about at the end of this session. So let's see what this golden age was all about. Number one, the Umayyads, the previous dynasty, they were Arab-centered and landed aristocracy. Okay? However, the Abbasid, they were known more for trade, business, wealth, and the arts. And so naturally, the Abbasid made possible this golden age. The Abbasids, they were more multiracial, multi-language, multi-religious, and secular in their lifestyle, and secular in the style of their governance. So that encouraged other people, non-Muslims and non-Arabs, to come and join in this movement of the new knowledge. Staying with the golden age. So this golden age involved Muslims and non-Muslims both, and it involved what? Look at the area of this golden age: Middle East, North Africa, Mediterranean, Syria, Iran, Iraq, Central Asia, and South Asia. That's a huge big area, and for the first time brought together into one, scholarship based on Arabic. These were artisans, writers, artists, architects. People traded and traveled like never before in this huge big area, from India in the east to Spain in the west, as I said, between Spain and India, and China now also included. Okay, and so you see a lot of ideas were exchanged, products were exchanged, and story were talked about. So exchange ideas, products, and they talk stories. One thing, speaking of China, is that in 751, in the Battle of Talas, closer to China, of course the Arabs, the Abbasid dynasty, they won the war against the Tang dynasty, and so after the war they captured a lot of Chinese prisoners. They brought them to Khurasan, to the base at that time of the Abbasid dynasty, and these Chinese prisoners of wars, they showed the Arab Abbasids and the local people how to make paper. Isn't that wonderful? Paper, I mean, that science and technology of making paper, and some people believe also printing which was already there, centuries old in China, already practiced. Yes, the Arab did not know anything about it, and if the Arab did not know anything about the paper and about printing, definitely the European did not know anything about it. The European would get paper and printing from the Arabs, the middleman, and the Arabs got it from the Chinese, and some scholars believe the beginning point is the Battle of Talas, 751, in which the Arabs captured Chinese prisoner of wars when they defeated the Tang army, and so brought these prisoners to their camps in Khorasan and asked them to show them how to make paper and wonderful stuff, and that is how it was part and parcel. The paper making and the printing was part and parcel of the golden age that the Abbasid dynasty started. Let's see further. Okay, the golden age, staying with that. Science beyond borders and believers. You could be anywhere without, whatever your country, you could be any type of believer, Hindu, Zoroastrian, Chinese, Greek, Christians, Orthodox, Catholic, Muslim, Shia, Sunni. You could partake into this golden age. Exchange of ideas among intellectuals. Okay, availability of books and resources. And regional courts attracted the best scientists, artists, and philosophers, beginning with 750 with the golden age under the Abbasid Muslim Empire. What you see is every king or local ruler, he would try his best to get the best philosopher, scientist, artist, architect, and that would be, a great thing for him to show off. And all these people, artisan and scientists, they had utilitarian as well as aesthetic purpose to serve in the court of the ruler. Okay. Still staying with the golden age, and the greatest person in this golden age was Harun al-Rashid, the most celebrated caliph, and as well as his brother Mamun al-Rashid that we talk about in the next slide. So this Harun al-Rashid, he made possible this golden age, and look at it. He was born in Ray, or some people called it Rai, in Iran, but ruled from Baghdad. Okay, so of Persian stock, so to speak. His father could be Arab, and his mother could be Persian, and that was not an uncommon thing. Very, as I told you in the beginning, a lot of intermarriages, and since especially Muslim men marrying non-Muslim women, that was common then and common now. And so because there is no caste system, intermarriages are very much common among Muslims. Interfaith or interracial, interlinguistic marriages very common among Muslims because all human beings are the same. Okay, so there is no caste system in Islam, and that also made it possible for Muslim to marry a woman belonging to any creed or any class or caste. Okay, let's see further. The golden age. The celebrated Abbasid Caliph Harun al-Rashid parading himself and his wealth in the streets of Baghdad. Okay. Harun al-Rashid receiving Charlemagne envoy. Charlemagne, Charles the great king of the Franks, sent him ambassadors all the way to Baghdad. And Harun al-Rashid, he gave an elephant to Charlemagne. He sent an elephant because, elephant in Europe never been seen. So he said that would make a good, gift of sending an elephant all the way from modern day Iraq to France to King Charles the Great Charlemagne. Okay. And his brother, Mamun al-Rashid, who also made possible this golden age, he received, guests, not so much from Charlemagne, but also from the Greek Byzantine Empire. And both Harun and Mamun, Harun al-Rashid, Mamun al-Rashid, as they call them, people call them Harun and Mamun, they established the House of Wisdom in Iraq, in Baghdad. There is a modern structure of that house, but destroyed in the first Gulf War. in 1990s. But the image is still there. Here what you see is the 12th century Muslim scholars imagining a talk with the 5th century BC Socrates. In Arabic, Socrates is called Sokrat, highly appreciated Greek pagan scholar, but still very much loved and appreciated and respected among the Muslim scholars. 850 AD, you see the rise of a great person, Al-Khwarizmi, from Khwarizm, which is much more in Iran rather than in Arabia. And so from his name, you get the word algorithm. And from his book, the title was Al-Jabr, you get the word algebra. If you don't like it, blame it on Professor Al-Khwarizmi. Okay? So from his name, you get the science of algorithms. And from the title of his book, Al-Jabr, you get the word algebra. And that's what he was, the master and the founder of that mathematical tradition. 12th century AD Muslim doctors in their operation theater, emergency room, don't do that at home. But still you see there the 12th century Muslim doctors, performing operations, surgeries. Here, respecting Al-Mamun and Abu al-Fida, the two great supporters of the sciences, NASA have recognized these two craters on the moon, and they are known as Al-Mamun and Abu al-Fida. And so that's, the modern age and the modern science and scientist community, they give respect to the people who made the golden age possible in 9th century, 10th, 11th, 12th century. And so here you have at least two craters on the moon named after Al-Mamun and Abu al-Fida. Some scholars say that in case of Al-Mamun, that could be a misspelling, but still, befits the situation, and it stuck. And so Al-Mamun was not too far away from doing all these great things because he was the maker of the golden age in the Middle East. Okay, let's see further. That golden age also gave us the 1001 stories of the Arabian Nights and you are looking at the latest 13th century manuscript right there in Arabic and translated into different languages now, English, Persian, different languages. Great stories. Arabian Nights, there you see the Shehzadeh telling the story to the king who was going to kill her, but slept, and so she survived 1001 nights, and eventually he would marry her. Okay? And this also gives us the story of Arabian Nights, the Ali Baba and 40 thieves in Baghdad. Now the Arabian Nights, there is a strange thing, 1001 stories and nights, and very popular. As I said, translated into different languages. However, there is no one single author of this whole, series of stories. Some were added over centuries, added to, and people picked it up till it became, thanks to later on the Arab scholars, as well as the Europeans, who put them together into what we have them right now, as 1001 Nights, or the Arabian Nights as popularly they are called. But they do not have any one single author. That's one thing. It's a collection of stories, some Arabic, some Arab stories, some Iranian, some Indians, and a lot more would be Indians, but the culture is almost the same, and so that's how they are, the stories without author. Okay, now let's go now into the Abbasid economy and subjects. The subjects, so far they are concerned, these are different people belonging to different faiths, different cultures, different classes, and making a wonderful economy possible, and still part of the golden age economy. That golden age in the Middle East involved Muslims, as I said, and non-Muslims from a lot of places. Look at this: Middle East, North Africa, Mediterranean, Syria, Iraq, Iran, Central Asia, and South Asia. And these are people, artisans, artists, architects, scientists, great scholars, and they traveled back and forth. They traded and traveled, like never before. People moved from one place, products moved from one place to another place, and very common theme, in the Abbasid dynasty, product is produced in Iran, but consumed in Iraq and even taken as far west as modern-day Morocco and Spain, and vice versa. So for the first time, you see the Mediterranean products in India and the Indian and the Chinese products going all the way west to the Mediterranean. And so this economy became very popular in the region, made Baghdad the capital of the dynasty, the capital of Iraq, a wonderful place to live in. And that would also bring trouble to Baghdad pretty soon. Let's see. Now, the Umayyad coins, the previous dynasty, based on the Sassanid prototype. All they had to do is, to write the Arabic inscription. And now, the Abbasid, very fine coins. And here is an interesting thing. This coin is basically Abbasid, Islamic coin, but used in England by an English king. And that's where in the middle he says, Offa Rex, Offa rules, the king. And that is based on, the Abbasid Islamic coin. The inscriptions are all Islamic on the sides, on the margins, and in between, he has his own name in the middle of it. And so that's a very common theme in the region. One group of people taking ideas from another and, selling them around and making them their own. And that was possible at that time, as we also see that these days. Let's see what else we have. I think you have a reaction report. And just write a brief note on the Golden Age and the Abbasid Empire. Very easy. Just on the Golden Age. In review, what we did is we talked about the Abbasid replaced the Umayyads. More trade and business was made possible. Exchange of intellectual and scientific ideas that we talked about, and the Golden Age in the Middle East, made possible by the Abbasids. Stay engaged. If you have any question, any comments, please go to Laudima, check your assignments and send me any message that you have. And I think we did a lot in this session. Thank you very much. See you next time with session 21. Aloha.